The Symphony of New York never has a moment of silence. It only changes its key. From the blaring horns of dusk, it shifts to the ceaseless hum of the night, an unending current of energy. But in the early hours of October 14th, 2024, on the 80th floor of Aethelred Tower, an unnatural silence reigned. It was a thick, heavy silence, as if the air itself had stopped breathing. Maria Flores felt it the moment the private executive elevator doors opened. She had cleaned this floor for 12 years and knew its every rhythm. This silence was an alarming, discordant note. As she pushed her utility cart along the Italian marble corridor, a sense of unease crept into her chest. Her final stop, as always, was the Olympus Boardroom, the glass and steel heart of a multi-billion-dollar tech empire. The heavy oak door, etched with the name Olympus in gleaming brass, was usually sealed by a complex security system. But this morning, it was merely ajar, a level of carelessness impossible at Aethelred. Maria swallowed, a foul premonition rising. She pushed the door open gently, and then she screamed. The shriek tore through the curtain of silence, a primal sound of horror that slammed against the glass walls, echoing its own terror. On the long, polished mahogany conference table, a man in a navy Tom Ford suit was slumped over. His head rested on a stack of documents, his right arm dangling, fingers nearly brushing the Persian rug. Beside him, a crystal glass lay shattered on the floor, its fragments glittering like dead stars under the cold L lights. Within minutes, the 80th floor had transformed from a sanctuary of power into a sealed-off crime scene. The victim was quickly identified. Adrian Vance, 34, the genius chief financial officer, Wall Street's golden boy. A living legend who had turned Aethelred from a sleeping giant into a market-devouring beast. He had everything a man could dream of. And now, he had nothing. The puzzle presented to the first responding officers seemed unsolvable. The door was locked from the inside. The state-of-the-art security system had logged no one else entering or leaving the room since 8:02 the previous evening, when Adrian himself had walked in. No signs of a struggle, no wounds, no weapon. It was as if death itself had walked through the walls, gently claimed a life, and vanished into thin air. When Detective Isabella Rossi of the NYPD Homicide Squad arrived, she was unfazed by the glamour of Aethelred Tower or the victim's fame. At 45, Rossi had seen enough tragedy unfold in both the grimiest Bronx apartments and the most luxurious Manhattan penthouses to know that death does not discriminate. She had sharp brown eyes that seemed to see through the facades people built, and a near-infinite patience. Colleagues called her the archaeologist for her ability to excavate truths buried under lies and time. She stood at the threshold of the Olympus room, letting her eyes absorb the scene. "It's too clean," she murmured to her young partner, Detective Mike Chen. "Artificially clean. Like someone intentionally wiped everything, including the air." The investigation began. The preliminary autopsy report only deepened the mystery. No clear cause of death. Adrian's heart, brain, and other organs were in perfect condition. Standard toxicology tests for cyanide, arsenic, and dozens of other common poisons all came back negative. The NYPD's digital forensics unit hit a similar wall. The keycard data confirmed only Adrian had entered, but upon closer inspection, they found a subtle anomaly. At 9:30 p.m., Aethelred servers had logged a system diagnostic command that lasted exactly 5 minutes and 12 seconds. During that window, the security camera feed for the 80th floor corridor had been perfectly looped. Technically, there was no blind spot, just a replay of old footage. This wasn't a glitch. This was a deliberate act, executed by someone with the highest level administrative access and intimate knowledge of the system. "We're looking for a ghost who holds the keys to the kingdom," Chen said, his voice laced with frustration. "Then, let's go talk to the people who live in the kingdom," Rossi replied. The first interview was with the king himself, Marcus Thorne, Aethelred's founder and CEO. He received Rossi in his office on the 81st floor, a bastion of power with a panoramic view of the city. Marcus, 58, appeared devastated. His eyes were red-rimmed, his voice low and choked with grief as he recounted how he had discovered and mentored Adrian. "He was like the son I never had," Marcus said, his hand resting on a framed photo of the two of them. "Brilliant, decisive, with a fire I recognized immediately. I gave him everything." "Everything?" Rossi repeated, emphasizing the word. "Everything," Marcus affirmed. "My trust. The future of this company. Why would I ever want to harm him?" Next was Evelyn Reed, head of R&D and Adrian's biggest rival. Evelyn didn't act. Her disdain for Adrian was almost palpable. "Adrian was a financer, not an innovator," she said, her voice like ice. "He cared about next quarter's numbers. I care about Aethelred in 10 years. We clashed on every level." When Rossi pressed her about a recent conflict over a project codenamed Chimera, Evelyn's composure cracked. "He wanted to sell our core AI technology to an outsider to pretty up the year-end financials. I told him he'd do it over my dead body." A grim half-smile touched her lips. "Well, it seems things went the other way, didn't they?" The final key interview was with Leo Martinez, Adrian's young, perpetually nervous assistant. Leo confessed that Adrian had been under immense stress. He'd been receiving threats after a secret affair with the wife of a board member ended badly. "He was scared," Leo said, tears welling. "He told me he was trying to fix a big problem that could ruin everything." The case was a tangled mess of lies, secrets, and competing motives. Rossi decided to return to the one thing she knew for sure: the death itself. She pushed the toxicology lab for a more comprehensive screen. "Don't look for horses, look for zebras," she told them. "Look for something that doesn't belong." Days later, a call came at 2 a.m. Dr. Anya Sharma, the lab chief, was ecstatic. "We found it, detective. A true zebra. A trace amount of a synthetic variant of tetrodotoxin, the pufferfish toxin. It's thousands of times more potent and designed to decay rapidly. It's a perfect murder weapon." And then, the decisive breakthrough. While reviewing Leo Martinez's interview tapes, Rossi noticed his nervous habit of chewing on the end of his pen. It triggered a memory. She pulled up the crime scene photos, the Mont Blanc fountain pen lying right next to Adrian's hand. He had a habit when he was stressed. he'd chew on his pen. Leo's words echoed in her mind. A cold dread washed over her. She ordered the pen to be tested immediately. The results confirmed her horrifying suspicion. The gold nib of the pen was laced with the deadly toxin. She had the method. She had the weapon. But who had the proximity to know Adrian's habit and the power to cover their tracks? A final piece of evidence came from the digital team. Buried on a heavily encrypted personal cloud server, they found an audio file Adrian had labeled insurance. When Rossi listened, she knew she had found her devil. It was Adrian's voice, shaky but resolute, confronting Marcus Thorne about embezzling hundreds of millions of dollars. And his ultimatum: 48 hours to confess, or he would expose everything. The second time Rossi walked into Marcus Thorne's office, she was not alone. When she played the recording, the CEO's mask of grief crumbled. "He gave me no choice," Marcus finally said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "I created him. He should have been grateful, but he bit the hand that fed him." In his cold confession, he laid out the entire calculated plot, from acquiring the poison to swapping the pens to remotely sealing the room. He was a toxic asset, Marcus concluded, just before the handcuffs clicked shut. "I simply liquidated him." The case was closed. Or so she thought. A month later, the package arrived at her precinct. No return address. Inside, on a bed of black velvet, lay a Mont Blanc fountain pen, identical to the murder weapon. Beneath it, a small typewritten note. "You missed one. L.M." The coldness of the pen in Detective Rossi's hand felt more chilling than the November night outside her office window. L.M. Leo Martinez. The young assistant whose tearful performance had earned Rossi's pity. That pity now curdled into a bitter taste in her mouth. She had been wrong. She had focused on the sharks like Marcus Thorne and Evelyn Reed, forgetting that in the ocean, the deadliest jellyfish are often the most transparent. Chen. Rossi called her partner at 3 a.m., her voice dangerously calm. "Pull everything on Leo Martinez. I want to know what brand of cereal he eats. Dig until we hit bedrock." The second investigation into Leo Martinez was not an interview. It was a dissection. On the surface, his life was an immigrant success story. But deeper, cracks appeared. He lived a Spartan life, had no close friends, and his digital footprint was suspiciously clean. Most importantly, financial records showed large, regular payments being wired from an offshore account into his. "Is he paying someone?" Chan asked. "Or someone is paying him," Rossi countered. Surveillance on Leo was maddeningly dull, until one Sunday afternoon. He drove to the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, sat on a bench, and waited. 10 minutes later, a woman sat at the other end. It was Evelyn Reed. They didn't speak. She left a newspaper between them and walked away. Leo picked it up and left. Confronted with the surveillance photo, Evelyn collapsed. "He was blackmailing me," she confessed, trembling. "Leo, he's a snake. He found out I was siphoning off intellectual property for my own startup."
He said he'd stay quiet if I helped him get some leverage against Marcus. I gave him chemical formulas he asked for, hidden in that paper. I thought it was just a threat. I never thought. You gave a man the recipe for one of the world's deadliest poisons, and you thought it was just a threat? Rossi's voice was filled with contempt. It was enough. When officers entered Leo's small apartment, he was waiting calmly, reading a book on Stoic philosophy. The frightened prey was gone, replaced by a man with an unnerving, absolute control. In the interrogation room, Leo needed no lawyer. He laid out his strategy not as a confession, but as a lecture. He hadn't been an assistant. He'd been an apprentice, studying both Adrian's brilliance and Marcus's ruthlessness. He saw the perfect opportunity. Adrian was too idealistic, Leo explained. Marcus was too greedy. They were both flawed. Leo had been the invisible hand, subtly feeding Adrian clues about Marcus's fraud, engineering their confrontation. He blackmailed Evelyn for the weapon and planted it, knowing Adrian's own habit would execute the sentence. His plan was for Marcus to be arrested for murder, Adrian to be dead, and for him to sweep up the most valuable pieces of the crumbling Aethelred Empire. "And the pen?" Rossi asked. "Sending it to me was a mistake," Leo smiled, a chilling, reptilian smile. "That wasn't a mistake, Detective. That was respect. You almost won. I just wanted you to know who the real chess master was." He was a brilliant psychopath, a monster hiding behind a student's glasses. As the officers led him away, he paused at the door. "You really think this was my idea?" he asked softly. "I'm just a good student. My teacher is the one who taught me that to build a new empire, sometimes you have to burn the old one to the ground." A cold dread seized Rossi. A teacher? "And that note," Leo added, a final taunt. "You think LM stands for Leo Martinez? So predictable. It stands for Legacy Matters." Before Rossi could react, he was gone. Legacy Matters.
The words echoed in her head. She scrambled to her office and switched on the financial news channel. A breaking news alert. A new company, Phoenix Innovations, had just acquired the entire core patent portfolio of Aethelred for a bargain price. The camera zoomed in on the CEO of Phoenix as he stepped to the podium. Rossi froze. The blood in her veins turned to ice. The man on the screen, smiling humbly at the press, was none other than Adrian Vance's father, the grieving man who had shown her his son's childhood photos. She remembered his words. "My son always wanted to do the right thing." And now she understood. He had decided to do the right thing his own way. He had watched his son be consumed and corrupted by Marcus Thorne's world. He didn't just want revenge. He wanted to reclaim his son's legacy, to purify it with fire. He had found in Leo Martinez the perfect instrument, a sharp and willing blade. He had pulled the strings from the shadows, using his own grief as the perfect cover. Rossi stared at the screen. The king was deposed. The pawn was captured. But the teacher, The true chess master now stood at the head of a new empire, built from the ashes of the old. The case was closed, but justice once again proved to be a complex and slippery thing. In the Symphony of New York, sometimes the silent notes are the most terrifying of all.